Hey, who are you? How come you're in here?
Horror movies have scared the bejesus out of us for years with their eerie sets, jaw-dropping kills, gruesome makeup, and suspenseful camera movements. But then found footage horror came along and turned everything upside down. Found footage horror movies take you out of your cozy seat, dump you right in the middle of the action, and make you feel like you're the one behind the camera. You're never ever sure if you'll make it out in one piece. These films thrive on the raw, unfiltered chaos. Think shaky cameras, muffled screams, performances that seem almost too real and dark, and grainy footage that'll force you to squint. But it wasn't until the 1980s Cannibal Holocaust that this was done right. The picture was so graphic and convincing that viewers believed they were witnessing real killings, and thus the movie was banned. Then came the Blair Witch Project, which was a massive hit and made the format popular again. We at Marvelous Videos enjoy the horror of all flavors, so in this video, let's look at 50 such found footage horror movies that will make you second guess everything. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Be careful. Hold my hand.
Wreck, 2007. The Spanish horror film Wreck begins with a TV reporter named Angela and her cameraman, Pablo, filming a segment at a nearby firehouse. An emergency call sends them racing to an apartment complex in Barcelona, which takes a chilling twist. Inside, they stumble upon an elderly woman who's lost control and bites a police officer. Soon, it turns into an epidemic. Things take a turn for the worse when the building is sealed off as a rabies-like epidemic transforms everyone inside the building into screaming ghouls. The terror intensifies. With firefighters, residents, and our protagonist trapped inside, something much worse is hiding in the shadows, with an insatiable appetite and infectious. One of the things that sets Wreck apart is its flawless execution as a horror film. In my opinion, it rightly earns a spot among the likes of legendary movies such as The Exorcist. Similar to The Exorcist, Wreck succeeds as a horror picture mainly because it prioritizes being a well-crafted, complete film over simply being a horror movie. The characters are believable and aren't merely scary props. They fumble, they freak out, they stare right into the camera and draw you a little too close to their nightmare. The claustrophobia is intensified by the cramped corridors and desperate attempts to flee, which is further intensified by the shaky handheld camera work. The film's success led to the creation of 3 sequels and an English-language remake called Quarantine, which came out only 2 years after the original was released. But do yourself a favor, watch the original, and maybe skip the remakes if you truly want to feel the dread. You'll regret it, but only because it's absolutely terrifying in the most thrilling way imaginable. Noroy The Curse, 2005. Noroy The Curse follows a documentary filmmaker, Masafumi Kobayashi, who's fascinated with all things supernatural. Things get interesting when he interviews a woman who insists she hears a loud baby crying in the next house, even though, oddly enough, there's no baby to be found. A curious Kobayashi approaches the neighbor and is greeted by an unfriendly, unpredictable woman who abruptly slams the door shut in his face. However, he does manage to sneak a peek at her 6-year-old son through a window. After a few days, the woman and her son mysteriously disappear, their porch littered with dead pigeons. Adding to the eerie atmosphere, the woman who initially reported the weird sounds, along with her daughter, meets an untimely end in an unknown accident. When Kobayashi digs deeper, he discovers a spine-chilling link between psychic powers, malevolent forces, and a centuries-old demon named Kagutsaba. Then there's Mr. Nori, a crazy psychic who wears a hat covered in foil and firmly believes ectoplasmic worms are devouring humans. Let's just say Kobayashi finds more than he bargained for. Having watched numerous horror films, I believed I'd become immune to fear. I've seen my fair share of scary movies, jump scares, and scary situations are nothing new to me. But Noroy was a whole other ball game. It sent shivers down my spine that I hadn't experienced in a long time. This movie won't have you leaping out of your chair, so if you're looking for an adrenaline rush, you might want to go elsewhere. Instead, it gets under your skin. Think of the Blair Witch Project, but on a grander scale, with more characters, a more complex plot, and terrifying levels of tension to scare its audience. So, are you prepared to take the plunge? Cloverfield, 2008. In Cloverfield, Rob's buddy Hud arranges a farewell party for Rob, who's prepared to leave for a new job in Japan. But things turn sour when Rob and his girlfriend Beth get into a furious disagreement during what was supposed to be a fun and carefree night. Right as Beth storms out, the earth begins to tremble. We see a news report of an oil tanker that went down near Liberty Island. But shit hit the fan when the head of the Statue of Liberty came crashing down the street, all battered up and chewed. We continue to witness the mayhem through Hud's lens as Rob and his buddies attempt to make sense of the absolute mayhem happening all around around them. They catch a glimpse of a gigantic creature's hand a few blocks away, right before the Woolworth building comes crashing down. The group then tries to flee Manhattan, but their hopes of escape are dashed when the bridge is smashed by the monster's enormous tail, tragically claiming one of Rob's friends' life in the process. While the Army National Guard fights the monster, Rob receives a message from Beth. It seems she's stuck in her apartment and unable to escape. The movie keeps you on your toes, pun intended, as the Big Apple crumbles in the background. Cloverfield feels like a slow burn, but once it builds up, the fast-paced action puts you in the thick of it, and the shaky camera work does a fantastic job of capturing it all. You'll feel like you're right there with the group, and trust me, I'm not even exaggerating. The running scenes are exhilarating, and once the scares begin, they never let you catch your breath. The monster's horrifying form is left to your imagination as you catch glimpses of it from various angles, but it's never entirely revealed. For anyone seeking a film with Godzilla-level intensity, a new take on horror, and some stylish scares, this is one you don't want to miss. Do not sleep on this movie at all. The Blair Witch Project, 1999. The OG of the found footage horror genre, The Blair Witch Project follows 3 student filmmakers, Heather, Michael, and Joshua, who go into the mysterious Black Hills Forest in Maryland to unravel the secrets surrounding the fabled Blair Witch legend. The woods have a shady past. Countless children mysteriously disappeared there in the 1940s, and residents still avoid going down into them. Equipped with a camera and a DAT recorder, they set out on their mission to document the entire investigation. However, what begins as a documentary project quickly becomes a nightmare, with the group losing their map and disturbing piles of rocks and some rather creepy stick figures hanging from trees. The group thought that they saw it all, but then came the night. Let's just say they didn't manage to get a good night's sleep in the middle of the dark woods filled with terrifying and unidentified noises. As the feeling of unease settles in, and they're almost out of food, they come to the realization that something evil is keeping them trapped in the forest. And just like that, one fateful night, they disappear into thin air. Lo and behold, a whole year later, deep beneath an abandoned house, a bag that contains their long-lost footage is found. So, what exactly went down during those intense 5 days? Did they really encounter something supernatural in the woods, or were they just victims of their own imagination? A little entertaining nugget from the movie is the directors, Myrick and Sanchez, decided to send 3 unknown actors into the woods with a simple plan to improvise a horror movie and film it themselves. And we all know the results of this little experiment were groundbreaking, to say the least. Well, they did establish a new subgenre of horror films and solidified the film's status as one of the most iconic horror movies ever made. Following the road of unconventional marketing, Myrick and Sanchez cleverly generated buzz and curiosity by making a website that portrayed the movie's events as if they were real. The website showcased missing posters for the 3 student filmmakers, snapshots of their belongings scattered in the woods, clips from the alleged found footage, conversations with investigators, and a chronology of unusual incidents in Blair's past. There was even a message board where people could talk about the case. During film festivals, the filmmakers even distributed flyers seeking information about the vanished students, further making it all too believable. There were no fancy tricks to rely on, but only authentic reactions of the cast, as they were unprepared for what lay ahead in the forest. The outcome was raw and without embellishments, had a disturbing feel, and didn't at all feel like a scripted film. By the time the characters lose all their hope, the viewer too feels the same despair. House LLC, 2015. For some reason, clowns always give me the creeps like no other. Topping it off with a basement full of satanic symbols and ancient Bibles lying around, you can count me out of the trip. But that's precisely what House LLC offers in its first installment, and I sat through it. The tale revolves around a crew of haunted house designers who build a new attraction for Halloween in the sleepy village of Abaddon. Unfortunately, the exciting opening night takes a tragic turn, and 15 people, including both crew members and guests, die. No one knew what happened that night, and it's remained a mystery. Jump ahead 5 years, and a documentary crew decides to find out what really happened. They gather testimonies, photograph, and recovered film from that tragic night. However, as they continue their investigation, their nightmare is far from finished. Strong performances and high-quality production value set the movie apart. You care about what happens to the characters and are far from the usual disposable horror stereotypes. They're realistic, grounded, and have depth, while characters in found footage tend to be flat, so that's refreshing. But if clowns give you the heebie-jeebies, this movie won't be your cup of tea. It absolutely nails the eerie atmosphere, and the scares are subtly terrifying. The jump scares are not right in your face or excessive CGI to be found. Shadows in the hallways or objects moving as you turn your head are some of the simple but horrifying visual elements used by the movie. Nothing is an overkill being exaggerated, which makes it even more effective. The acting is absolutely fantastic, but the casting couldn't be more perfect. And that last scene, wow. Just wow. Shocking and very unexpected. I'd say found footage horror done right.
All right, if we were to find it, the range of the walkie-talkie. Holy shit!
Grave Encounters, 2010. A group of 5 individuals. A lone, deserted mental hospital. 14 cameras. A single locked door. Countless windows with bars. Lance Preston, the producer of the Grave Encounters reality series, and his team are completely clueless about what lies ahead. Years of neglect have left the Collingwood Psychiatric Hospital in decay. The place has become a magnet for all things spooky, from whispers of ghostly apparitions to unexplained noises that send chills down your spine. This is just what Lance needs to add some excitement to their upcoming episode. For the sake of entertaining television, they decide to spend the night in the facility to conduct an investigation, and they make sure to record everything. However, they quickly discover that Collingwood is more than just a haunted place. It's alive and determined to keep them trapped. Stuck in a never-ending labyrinth of hallways and winding corridors, the group is tormented by the restless spirits of past patients. As the night progresses, their grip on reality begins to loosen and pushes them closer to insanity as they unearth the disturbing truth about the hospital's sinister history. The recording ends up being their last episode, something nobody was prepared for. Grave Encounters absolutely nails everything you could possibly want in a terrifying film. The eerie vibe of the mental institution is absolutely on point, and the nail-biting tension intensifies throughout the film. Though it takes time to get going, when the tension reaches its crescendo, it'll most certainly leave you on the edge of your seat. It's a film that doesn't hold back when it comes to horror. Demons and spirits don't lurk in the shadows, but instead they burst into sight, which makes it both entertaining and terrifying. It captures every terrifying moment in its genre, which consists of flicks about a bunch of cocky people who come to regret staying the night in a haunted house. After that came a sequel, but it didn't quite live up to the first one, and hence the idea for a third film was scrapped. But yeah, you should definitely check this out. Late Night with the Devil, 2023. This documentary-style film uncovers the supposedly lost tapes of late-night talk show presenter and comedian Jack Delroy's show from the 1970s. Night Owls was Jack's attempt to unseat Johnny Carson's Tonight Show from its position as the most popular late-night television program. So Jack, in his desperation for a breakthrough, decides to present a Halloween special with a lineup of guests talking about the paranormal and the occult. However, Jack finds he's completely unprepared as the show progresses. The night takes an unexpected turn when unseen powers begin to exert their control, blurring the boundaries between amusement and terror. Keeping the performers together, though, becomes an impossible challenge as the otherworldly powers begin to demonstrate their strength. Right from the beginning, the film establishes a spooky atmosphere through its opening narration. The movie skillfully combines wit, playfulness, and authentic moments of fear. Things just keep getting more unpredictable, and just when you think it can't possibly get any worse, it does. The characters' reactions are on point and draw you into the terrifying events on screen. The kills are quite gruesome and well done, even though there's an excessive but creative use of worms, I think. VHS, 2012. The 6 horrifying stories that make up VHS are all told from the viewer's perspective. Every segment contributes to a larger, convoluted narrative that's connected by the main story. Tape 56. In this background narrative, an unknown individual hires a group of misfits to steal videotapes from an old man's home. They're just instructed to obtain these recordings. No information about what's on them is provided. However, once they step inside, they discover far more than they expected. A lot of other tapes, and yes, the lifeless body of the poor old man. But they don't give up. Instead, they gather as many tapes as possible and settle comfortably there to watch them one by one. That's messed up. As the tapes play, we, the audience, are right there with them and see every terrifying story play out before our eyes. Some of these stories really make an impact, while others were more like, eh? Although the first part may take some time to get going, but once it does, it grabs your attention, and the final outcome is certainly worth the wait. You see, blood and nudity don't make a movie, but when done properly, they certainly don't hurt in horror. So there's dark humor, horrific gore, and yeah, some nudity. The segments cover a wide range of horror subgenres, from clever slashes to eerie ghost stories and malevolent demons. And if you're anything like me, you'll get it when I say that it's truly done its job when it's 1:43 a.m. in the morning and you find yourself checking under the bed with the lights on, all to catch some sleep. VHS 2, 2013. While the first VHS is considered by many horror enthusiasts to be the best in the series, the sequel, VHS 2, really steps it up a level. With 4 nail-biting stories that spare no grisly detail, this anthology promises a midnight cinema experience unlike any other, complete with alien invasions, flesh-hungry zombies, and otherworldly entities. 2 detectives enter an apartment and find many videotapes with the word watch written on them. So, of course, they do it. Even though the plot doesn't bother to explain how the tapes got there, let's just go with the flow. The opening tape introduces us to a man who's undergone a rather unique procedure. His eye has been replaced with an artificial one with a camera that records whatever it sees. Not to sound insensitive, the man is basically a walking CCTV camera. However, the situation becomes quite bizarre when the eye begins to detect eerie apparitions throughout the house. This short has a ton of jump scares, but even includes an awesome underwater scene to top it off. In the second story, we have a biker with a GoPro helmet who's suddenly bitten by a zombie. Before you know it, he transforms into a zombie himself, and the rest of the tape captures his bloodthirsty rampage as he hunts down and feasts on the living. Be on the lookout for a birthday bash that's sure to bring some wild and chaotic fun. The anthology's third tape is its shining star. Safe Haven tells the story of an Indonesian film crew that investigates a rural cult. Things change for the worse as the cult leader reluctantly agrees to let them film. It's contemporary horror at its finest, with nail-biting suspense, bloodshed, horrifying monsters, and a monstrous figure that'll haunt your thoughts for years to come. At a solid 40 minutes, this tape is the longest in the anthology. But trust me, every minute is worth it. Next, we have Slumber Party Alien Abduction, a tape that likes to think outside the box. While their parents are away, a group of 13-year-olds are left at a lodge with their older sister and her boyfriend. The kids attach a camera to their dog and deliriously document their mischievous adventures. However, when extraterrestrials storm the lodge, things get pretty serious too fast. VHS 2 fixes the problems with the previous film and delivers a more tightly crafted experience. It keeps the raw, gritty vibe of the first film, but has more action and dark humor. This one surely has a little something for everyone. As Above, So Below, 2014. As Above, So Below follows a crew of fearless explorers as they embark on a daring expedition into the catacombs beneath Paris, equipped with headlamp GoPro cameras to capture every moment of their journey. The group is determined to locate an ancient philosopher's stone, which legend has it holds the key to perpetual life. Soon, their exciting adventure turns into a spine-chilling nightmare when they become stuck in a labyrinth filled with horrifying creatures and unnerving secrets of their own. Unlike other discovered footage scares, this one has an archaeological bent that gives it a new spin. The cramped, suffocating dark tunnels of the catacombs heighten the suspense to an extreme level. Let's just say it combines elements of Uncharted, Tomb Raider, The Descent, and even a hint of Blair Witch. Surprisingly, it successfully blends them all together. However, you should know that this one builds slowly. Patience is key, but the payoff is definitely worth it. The terror strikes, and it strikes hard, particularly in the third act, and there's no getting away from it. The sound design is absolutely on point and just right for the kind of unsettling atmosphere that makes a good horror film memorable.
6, 5.
Apollo 18, 2011. Apollo 18 is a suspenseful found footage film that exposes the shocking truth behind NASA's last clandestine voyage to the moon in the 1970s. 2 astronauts on the moon's surface and 1 in orbit are the protagonists of this film, which follows their journey to uncover the moon's terrible, well-kept secret. Looks like there's something lurking up there, something that has nothing to do with the Americans or the Russians. And whatever it is, it's not exactly rolling out the welcome mat for us. Or maybe it is, but trust me, you don't want to find out why. Without a doubt, the idea is one of a kind. Since the moment humans landed on the moon, there's been little doubt about its ability to sustain life. However, following Apollo 17, people began to question as to why we never made a comeback. Apollo 18 tries to provide a terrifying explanation. The film perfectly captures the authentic look and feel of a genuine lunar mission. The lunar landscape is really lifelike, and strike a perfect balance between being convincing and not going overboard. The scares are perfectly timed and highly effective, if you ask me. Similar to Cloverfield, the extraterrestrial creatures are kept under wraps. Instead, you catch a peek of these rock-like organisms that seem like spiders or crabs, which adds to the creepy vibe. This deliberate choice enhances the overall sense of unease and tension. Although the plot is straightforward, it accomplishes a great deal, and the acting is outstanding, especially from the 2 main astronauts. The pacing is perfectly timed, building a sense of unease that reaches its terrifying climax when the astronauts venture into the ominous, dimly lit craters. We all know that Apollo 18 isn't for everyone. Anyone hoping for a gruesome spectacle with blood spatters would be disappointed, but for those who love a good conspiracy theory and make them question real-life occurrences, this one is what you just might need. The Taking of Deborah Logan, 2014. Ever watch those movies where you can't help but shout at the screen because the characters just can't seem to get anything right? Yeah, this is one of those. The movie starts with a documentary crew visiting the home of Deborah Logan, an Alzheimer's patient played by Jill Larson. Although Deborah isn't thrilled about becoming the subject of a documentary, Sarah, Deborah's daughter, played by Anne Ramsey, manages to get her to agree. After some discreet discussions, we discover that Deborah's home is on the verge of being repossessed, and Sarah views the documentary as a golden opportunity to secure the funds necessary to prevent its repossession. So, the documentary crew set up shop in the house, but But soon, to everyone's horror, things begin to go terribly wrong. Something much darker is actually hiding behind Deborah's sickness, it turns out. I have to say, the acting in this movie is both impressive and horrific. It made me think of the Babadook. Especially Jill Lawson is absolutely terrific as Deborah. One moment she's the friendly neighbor next door, and the next she transforms into this terrifying creature from your darkest dreams. Her performance is absolutely flawless. Right from the start, even before natural elements mark their attendance, the movie has a foreboding atmosphere. The special effects are absolutely mind-blowing. But just a heads up, there are some intense scenes that might not be suitable for those who are scared easily. When it comes to getting under your skin, this movie is absolutely an A+. In all my years of being a horror enthusiast, this was the first time I couldn't bring myself to watch a scene. The final image is perfectly etched in my mind, and if you enjoy horror that's both eerie and disturbing, this one's definitely worth watching. All in all, creepy done right.
That are technically
Okay.
correct.
All right. 2 lies, 1 truth.
And I get to go.
Creep 2, 2017. Creep, which came in 2014, was a film that made us realize the found footage genre isn't dead yet, particularly when approached with a minimalist style without making it too complicated. While the climax wasn't without flaws, it was rather satisfying, and it had some good jump scares to its name. Then came Creep 2, starring Mark Duplass, who now calls himself Aaron as a serial murderer who changes his identity and delves deeper into the dark world. And he hasn't changed at all. He continues to approach his victims and get uncomfortably close to them before killing them, all while documenting every moment. However, at this point in his life, he's approaching 40 and starting to feel the burden of his deadly routine. Literally. Introducing Sarah, a video artist who, after seeing an online ad for video work, believes she's found her next project subject. She goes to a remote cabin in the woods, where she meets Aaron, who has every intention to kill her. No surprise there. However, he makes a deal to spare her life for the next 24 hours. But there's something Sarah must agree to. The camera must roll at all times. As the serial killer, Mark Duplass is superb. There's just a certain charm mixed with a touch of unease when it comes to him. Every grin, outburst of passion or deadpan moment feels both easy and incredibly powerful. He has an eerie ability to read into the minds of his victims, effortlessly shocking, frightening, or intimidating them in the way he wants. The plot twists ensure that the tension is kept at a high level and the dark humor is perfect and doesn't feel forced or excessively edgy. This serial killer movie is anything but ordinary. Paranormal Activity, 2007. This film not only brings back found footage horror, but it also made us all question every little creak and shadow in our own homes. The story revolves around a young couple named Katie and Mika, who find themselves caught up in a series of unexplained bizarre occurrences in their home that none of them can explain. Mika decides to take matters into his own hands and sets up surveillance cameras all over their house, eager to capture whatever mischief is afoot. When Mika starts reviewing the footage, things take a turn from eerie to absolutely horrifying. The effectiveness of Paranormal Activity is due to its simplicity. Nothing ever changes. It's the same old routine. The camera stays put in the corner of the bedroom and records whatever happens while they sleep. The film avoids using cheap jump scares or overly loud noises to terrify its audience. On the contrary, it creates suspense by using silence, subtle movements, and the fear of the unknown. Paranormal Activity sets itself apart from most horror movies today by completely avoiding any gore, sex, or exploitation. The main idea is the unnerving feeling that there might be something malevolent lurking right under our noses. Filled with suspenseful moments and unexpected sightings, many people left screenings of Paranormal Activity because they were absolutely terrified to continue. The film's filled with tight silences and hidden apparitions. Mika, on the other hand, just can't resist messing with the demons despite all the warnings. But from the many horror movies that I've sat through, tinkering with a demon is a recipe for disaster, my friend. Finally, if you want to see a horror film done properly, watch Paranormal Activity. It's about the unseen, the unheard, and the creeping fear that lurks in the silence. Rec 2, 2009. Following directly on from the events of the first film, the second one begins. A small SWAT team enters the building, this time accompanied by a doctor assigned to meticulously document every detail. The camera work gets a little fancy here, going from a single camera to several views with video cameras and tiny cams fastened to the SWAT members' helmets. It was a nice touch that gave us a variety of viewpoints. At some point, we encounter a group of teenagers who manage to sneak into the building, each armed with their own camera. And as expected, the gang finds themselves in yet another life or death battle, just like in the original movie. The air of mystery in Rec 1 was powerful. You couldn't help but feel like you were right there, stuck in that apartment building, clueless about what was happening inside and outside. Science, a virus, zombies, and actual illness were all part of the first film's realistic plot. However, in Rec 2, the plot suddenly veers into a demonic possession zone, which seems a little like The Exorcist. In this sequel, Satan takes control of the infected or possessed individuals, going so far as to change their voices to heighten the eerie atmosphere. While in the first installment, the camera makes you feel like you're right in the middle of things and experiencing everything firsthand, Rec 2 adopts an objective third-person perspective, like an observer from outside. The character development is nowhere near as impressive as it was in the initial movie. The original gave us real, relatable reactions from regular people. In this case, the characters are a little extreme, and you can't help but disagree with the stupid choices they make. The effects are still first-rate, with convincing blood and makeup. The use of CGI is subtle and impressive. There are some good parts, but the sequel might fall short of the first in terms of realism and the genuine terror it evoked. Diary of the Dead, 2007. The plot of this sequel follows the same premise as the first film, one that's all too familiar. A zombie apocalypse is about to break out. Sound familiar? Well, it reminds me of Shaun of the Dead. However, this time around we follow a group of film students who decide to record their fight for survival as the dead start to rise. Once again, the director George Romero uses the horror genre to deliver a strong social commentary, this time critiquing our society's fixation on social media and technology. And quite frankly, I can't argue with him. Alright, let's talk about the nitty-gritty details. Although I had high hopes for this movie, it unfortunately fell short of my expectations. I won't say it was outright terrible, but I see it as a missed opportunity. And the characters, well, the less we talk about them, the better. This has to be the weakest lead actor I've seen in quite some time. The actors aren't at fault, the characters are. They're just plain awful, and the award for the most dim-witted character, pardon my French, goes to Jason, the lead cameraman. And I have no doubts that if there is a zombie apocalypse, and that's a big if, Jason would be the first one to get killed. Instead of assisting his buddies, he prefers to video them being attacked by zombies. Yeah, that's dim-witted. Out of the lot, I found Tracy to be the only character worth rooting for. She cleverly ditches her group, makes a swift getaway in the RV, and leaves all the nonsense behind. And that's a smart move my girl pulled, because if she hadn't have done that, I'm pretty sure these half-brained would have gotten her killed too. So I say, well done, girl. Also, the human antagonists in the film failed to make a lasting impression, likely because the main group's foolishness is already villainous in itself. While the gore relies on CG effects from the mid-2000s, it's still fairly impressive, and I must admit that the zombies are quite impressive in their appearance. The violence is quite convincing, and the film's format works. One particular scene that I loved was in the barn, when the zombies suddenly encircled the group and started pounding on the door. The scene is executed fantastically. It reminded me of the tense vibe in Night of the Living Dead. Incantation, 2022. After spending 6 long years in a psychiatric institution, Lee Ruonan is finally reunited with her daughter, Dodo. The little girl was cared for by social worker Shi Chi-ming in a foster home in Taiwan before Lee Ruonan regained custody of her. In the past, Ruonan's boyfriend Tung and his cousin Yuan posted Ghostbuster videos on their YouTube channel. Their most recent investigation brought them to a secluded village where their relatives followed the Yunnan religion and worshipped Mother Buddha. The villagers gave them a fair warning about a certain tunnel that was off limits to all. Yet their curiosity got the best of them, and they decided to explore the tunnel. Shortly thereafter, Dodo started experiencing unsettling symptoms, as if some malevolent force had latched onto her. When Dodo fell gravely ill, Ming, who adored Dodo as if she were his own, along with Ruonan, set out to search for a remedy. In their search, they discover that Mother Buddha was not the kind deity she was believed to be, but rather a malevolent entity. So now the question arises, will they be able to rescue Dodo and themselves from this terrible fate? Incantation is a film determined to give you the fright of your life. This series' supernatural story combines traditional horror with a found footage approach and is as interesting as it is terrifying. Troll Hunter, 2010. 3 university students set out to record a string of unexplained bear killings, only to uncover the shocking truth that the true killers aren't bears, but trolls. You heard it right, towering trolls from Norway. Their investigation leads them to a rather intriguing individual, a government-employed troll hunter. His goal was to eliminate any trolls if they went too near to human territory in order to conceal the fact that these enormous beings really did exist. Unfazed, the students willingly agreed to accompany the hunter in his quest to investigate the reason behind the troll's sudden aggression. While the goal of Troll Hunter is not a film that wants to make you jump out of your skin, it definitely has its fair share of nerve-wracking moments. It has a clever tongue-in-cheek tone that skillfully combines humor with the serious danger that these trolls present to both humans and themselves. As the kids navigate through the woods at night, they meet fallen trees, wrecked automobiles, and the occasional heart-pounding chase. The danger feels all too real. While trolls are an interesting addition to the plot, it evokes a perfect blend of terror and intrigue. They build dread without being overly serious, if you know what I mean. But the devil's in the details, and that's what makes Troll Hunter work and not reduced to a movie with giant trolls. The film elaborately created trolls with precision and captured the breathtaking beauty of the Norwegian landscapes, which I hope I can see myself someday. The special effects in this film are absolutely mind-blowing and breathe life into the trolls, while a found footage technique adds credibility to the whole shenanigans. The performances are impressive, but the trolls are the real stars. Something I never thought I'd say. It's campy, funny, and maybe a bit cheesy at times. The Last Exorcism, 2010, filmmakers Iris and Daniel set out to disprove the practice of exorcisms and find a willing participant in Reverend Cotton Marcus, a minister with a family history of exorcisms. Cotton's faith may be uncertain, but he couldn't resist the drama, theatrics, and impassioned speeches. Hence, Cotton used to perform phony exorcisms with smoke and mirrors, literally, until he meets Louis Sweetser, a desperate father who firmly believes that his daughter Nell is under the grip of Satan, and Cotton decides to perform one last exorcism for the sake of the documentary. When Cotton, Iris, and Daniel arrive at the Sweetser home, Cotton carries out his fake exorcism. Following the ritual, he declares her free of the demon. But when things spiral out of control, it becomes clear that there may be more going on than Cotton had imagined. The strength of this work lies in its well-developed characters. Unlike the typical one-dimensional horror film characters we usually see, this one takes its sweet time to fully develop the backstories of its main characters. While everyone in The Last Exorcism has solid performances, Patrick Fabian's portrayal of Reverend Cotton Marcus is truly impressive. He carries the picture for the most part and effortlessly sells the character's intricate mix of doubt and charisma. The scares are brilliantly executed, with some really nasty bits of a horrific finger-snapping scene that can make anybody's skin crawl. The premise is quite refreshing, giving an old cliché a fresh lease on life. The terror sneaks up on you, and the barn exorcism scene avoids the usual horror, blood and gore. The ending also has a touch of 70s cult horror and kinda reminds me of the Blair Witch Project and Cannibal Holocaust. The tensions and well-developed characters of the film make up for the film's slow pace, and I'm not complaining.
We don't have an agenda. We're just trying to document things that are meaningful.
Oh, yeah.
The Sacrament, 2013. Two journalists join a fashion photographer on his trip to a remote religious community to see his sister, who's recovering from addiction and living a new life. When you first see the commune, one might think it's a bizarre but beautiful Christian community that provides a clean slate for people who want to get away from it all. However, as the three visitors continue their stay, they discover a darker, more dangerous side and quickly begin to fear for their safety. If you're even somewhat familiar with the Jonestown massacre, you can probably guess where this is going. So there may not be too many surprises for you in this. And if you have no inkling about the incident, let's keep it that way and maybe enjoy the movie. Nevertheless, The Sacrament is still worth watching. There are no jump scares, no sudden movements of the camera, no shadowy figure lurking outside the door. And yet, this movie gives me jitters. Instead, it's based on actual events, which makes it all the more horrifying, I suppose. However, predictability is also the film's main fault. It has nothing new to offer, which we already don't know since it's based on a tragic incident. The movie relies on classical horror tropes, but this in no way makes it any less disturbing. While it's a realistic, slow-burn terror, it keeps you interested and nervous the whole time. Jam Haunted Asylum, 2018. In the first ever South Korean found footage horror film, we follow a crew of a horror web series as they investigate Gonjam Psychiatric Hospital for a live stream. As the team members wander into various rooms of the abandoned asylum, they can't shake off the feeling that they're being watched by some unexpected company. This film is seriously creepy. The direction is incredibly clever and utilizes the live stream gimmick to its fullest potential, and this kept the audience on their toes. If the movie wasn't creepy in itself, let me tell you that the film was shot in a real location. Yep, there's a Gonjam Psychiatric Hospital in South Korea, which happens to be truly haunted. In addition to this, the actors used their real names, which added realism and spookiness to the whole plot. Jump scare is used sparingly, so you're not tired of the same old tricks. That's definitely a win, in my opinion. The acting is effortless, and the cast really nails it when it comes to portraying a bunch of adventurous young adults who are all about seeking thrills. The film starts off slowly, but the second half is a scare fest that leads up to a terrifying finish. The Visit, 2015. When a mother of two young kids receives an unexpected call from her estranged parents who want to finally meet their grandkids, she reluctantly agrees. The kids, excited about the adventure, are all in, particularly the daughter, an aspiring filmmaker who decides to document the entire visit. Soon, strange things started happening, particularly after 9:30 p.m., and it left us all wondering what was truly happening with Nana and Pop Pop. While the plot is pretty straightforward, The Visit, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, is a terrifying film that features its trademark twisted storytelling. One of the most memorable scenes for me is when the kids play hide-and-seek under the house. What starts off as an exciting game changes into an episode of nightmares. Not for the kids, for me. The movie sticks to classic horror elements. No flashy CGI or over-the-top action. Instead, it focuses on creating an atmosphere that truly gets under your skin, which it does. The grandparents are perfectly cast. Every single character has a crucial part to play in this gripping drama. All I can say is that the mum could have easily avoided all the trouble by simply showing the kids a photo of their grandparents. Just a thought. The Conspiracy, 2012. Aaron and Jim, two aspiring filmmakers, select Terrence, a conspiracy theorist who spends his days spinning tales about covert organizations pulling the strings behind the scenes as the subject for their film. They find him intriguing at first, but later realize he is indeed cuckoo. However, when Terrence vanishes in thin air, Aaron and Jim are faced with the disturbing thought that Terrence might have been onto something the whole time, especially the one about a mysterious organization called the Tarsus Group. Reportedly, this group of influential persons is supposedly controlling global events in order to establish a new world order and exert their control over various aspects of society. As they dig deeper, it seems the reality is darker than they could have ever imagined. The conspiracy takes the audience into the depths of conspiracy theories and seamlessly merges found footage horror with an eerily convincing mockumentary style. From 9/11 to rituals performed by world leaders in secret, the film weaves together a number of disturbing conspiracies. If you've ever been down YouTube's rabbit hole, you'd know exactly what I mean. The film certainly makes you wonder how much is real and how much is imaginary, and combines real-life events with made-up claims almost flawlessly. I think it's the air of believability that works for the movie. There are no supernatural monsters or fantastical elements. Instead, it makes you ponder over the uncomfortable idea that the world we live in might not be as it seems. The score adds an extra layer of excitement as the characters gradually come to understand the seriousness of what they've stumbled upon. So, if you're into conventional horror with jump scares and monsters under the bed, let me just put it bluntly that this film is not for you. But if you like psychological horror and stories, well, this film 100% delivers. Afflicted, 2013. This found footage horror begins with two best friends, Cliff and Derek, leaving Canada to take a journey they will never forget. But their adventure takes an unexpected turn when Derek is diagnosed with a brain aneurysm and is now determined to make the most of life while he still can. You see, Derek meets a woman named Audrey in a French bar and decides to bring her back to his hotel. The next day, Cliff finds a barely conscious Derek all alone in the room, covered in blood. Turns out, Audrey was a vampire, and the encounter gave Derek superpowers such as superhuman strength and speed, among many others. However, there are some drawbacks too, and they are terrible. The sun's rays blind and burn him, and if he doesn't eat, he turns into a hideous monster with an insatiable hunger for human blood. It's a short film, around 85 minutes long, so it jumps right into the thrilling parts without any unnecessary delays. The plot picks up heat right away and never loses momentum. As Derek's condition deteriorates, you care about Derek's fate because he's such a likable character. Given the small cast, the performances are absolutely stellar, and the actors readily carry the film. The effects and makeup are absolutely fantastic and bring the whole thing to life. The shaky cam footage in this film manages to avoid the usual messiness found in other found footage films and feels organic. Afflicted steers clear of the typical horror cliches and serves up genuine thrills as Derek's desperation grows. It's an exciting journey, out and out.
And with some of the townsfolk, it did cause arguments.
Chicken plants are putting...
The Bay, 2012. 4th of July is the one day all Americans are out and about on the streets, celebrating their Independence Day with fireworks and festivities. Living in the Bay Area serves as a perk, since you don't have to drive several hours to spend some quality time with your family on the beachside. But what happens when things take a turn for the worse in the middle of the celebrations? Well, that's what Barry Levinson's The Bay answers. The 4th of July celebrations are underway in the small town of Chesapeake Bay, Maryland, when suddenly a mysterious infection breaks out. At first, the residents of the town complain about skin irritation. While a simple case of eczema is not remotely scary or hysteria-inducing, these skin conditions soon worsen into fully formed blisters, blood vomiting, bleeding from every orifice of the body, and people losing their minds. We hear people begging to be shot because they simply can't tolerate the pain anymore, and those scenes just stick with you. Unlike other found footage movies where the cameraman keeps recording everything while going through the most traumatizing events of their life, this movie gives us bits and pieces of information by using all of the technology available at the disposal of the main characters, which makes the experience far more immersive. We have the news reporters. Donna and her cameraman are documenting everything because the FBI shut their station blog down. We have two oceanographers who found the main source of the problem months before the infections happened and who documented their findings. We get blurry dashcam footage of the handful of cops who are running around town doing their best to help the townsfolk. We have the security footage and the Skype conversations of the head of the hospital and the CDC as they try to figure out what they can do to stop this infection from spreading. Finally, we have the poor Talmot family sailing to Claridge, unaware that the town has been shut down, who are blissfully recording their experience with their infant. It's a harrowing experience that feels just too real to be staged. You can genuinely believe whatever's happening. And the fact that the government tried to contain the mutation caused by severe environmental pollution instead of doing something about the actual problem is something I feel a lot of us can agree with. While Barry Levinson was initially asked to make a documentary on environmental pollution, the fact that in the end he gave us what he called an 80% factually accurate mockumentary is genuinely a win for us. If you're looking for a found footage film that leaves you squirming in your seat, well, this movie's for you. Deadstream 2022. If some place is haunted, you know for a fact that a loud YouTuber will show up there with the GoPro and record every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind while screaming, "Oh my god, guys!" at the top of their lungs. Whether you like this type of content or not is a separate argument, but as a horror fan, you have to admit it does give us a good setup for a horror movie, right? Well, that's what Joseph Winter and Vanessa Winter thought when they came up with Deadstream. Deadstream is, as you can guess, a movie about a YouTuber named Sean Ruddy. Like a lot of YouTubers, Sean is a fan of likes, sponsorships, and popularity. But when he pulls a few stunts that go too far, he decides that instead of making a half-assed apology video, he'd win back his audience. So, to do that, he decides to livestream his greatest fear, living alone in a haunted house for a night. He gets all his stuff, multiple GoPros, a tablet to watch the feed from each camera, as well as a laptop to see his own stream and reply to all the comments as they pop up. This format of the movie helps us suspend that usual disbelief a lot of us fans feel in found footage films. We don't have to worry about why the cameraman is filming or why the video is so high quality because, hey, the man is a YouTuber who's desperate to rise to fame. Of course, he has expensive cameras and is filming everything. The storytelling of this movie has struck the right ratio between being absolutely chilling and completely believable. We can understand why Sean is not ready to pack up and go home. We also know why he's so desperate to stay despite all hell breaking loose around him, and that gives us the perfect recipe for a good horror movie. Plus, the comments on his stream are hilarious, which is always a plus. The clever writing is completely gripping, and you'll definitely find yourself rooting for our over-the-top influencer who's extremely scared but won't go out looking for the source of the creepy sound no matter what. The House's October Built 2014. Directed by Bobby Rowe as his directorial debut, The House's October Built is an interesting found footage Halloween film that definitely deserves a watch. We follow a group of 5 friends who decide to go from one scary park to the other, interviewing everyone as they move. The goal for their Halloween is to find the most authentic haunted house ever. But who would have guessed that they'd end up with more than they'd bargained for by the end of it? Around 30 million Americans visit haunted houses attractions per year, so the fact that visitors might end up getting tables turned on their expectations is not that far-fetched. While it could be because of overeager staff who simply want to thrill the visitors, some background checks soon reveal that there's more to it than that. For these particularly malevolent workers, giving the thrill is not the important part. Getting the thrill is. As the movie reaches its climax, with all the 5 protagonists separated, with one camera to record their horrifying destiny, the panic and chaos increase, leaving us on the edge of our seats.
And get better.
The Poughkeepsie Tapes, 2007. If you like being chilled to your bones, then this film is for you, dear viewer. John Eric Dowdle went all out for his 2007 pseudo-documentary film, which centers around the actions of a killer. During a raid in Poughkeepsie, New York, the police were expecting everything except boxes and boxes of depraved videotapes. 800 tapes were recovered from that house, and the contents were simply chilling. The maker of these tapes is no other than Water Street butcher Edward Carver, a serial killer. Each tape is more depraved than the previous one, showing just how sick and twisted a person can be. What starts off as stalking and kidnapping victims soon ends up with their agonizingly slow deaths after being tortured for what seems to be an eternity. From killing and raping an 8-year-old girl to cutting off a man's head only to put it inside his wife's womb. This movie has it all. With the mix of horrifying crimes, interviews with victims who somehow managed to survive this killer, and the FBI agents working on the case, this entire movie is a wild ride. The fact that there's no clear modus operandi behind his killings makes it extremely difficult for the police even to determine his next killing, let alone catch him. The only thing you can do is wait, like helpless prey, until Carver strikes again. Yeah, this isn't for everyone, but if you think you'll be able to survive the stark realism of the killer and his actions without spiraling into severe anxiety and paranoia, well, then do give this movie a watch. Unaware, 2010. While we have a lot of supernatural horror on this list, we can't forget the science fiction horror of 2010, Unaware. Directed by Sean Bardin and Robert Cooley, this movie is a thrilling ride. Joe and Lisa, the couple we follow, pull us into the film with their banter and romance. You definitely share the same excitement that they feel when Lisa and Joe get engaged. This certainly pays off when things start taking a turn for the worse. We see them entangled in something far greater than anything they or we could have expected. What starts out as a visit to Joe's grandparents soon ends up becoming something far worse. This is when they find old military technology running in the locked-up garage, with newspaper clippings of the 1947 Roswell UFO incident. As if that's not enough, Joe ends up finding a lifeless alien in a crate, which obviously leads to more panic. You feel the tension, the worry that Joe feels as he wonders about his grandpa's safety and contemplates calling the FBI, only for them not to believe their testimonials. Obviously, with a creepy dead alien in the shed and no help from the authorities, there's no reason for the couple to stay in the ranch for a minute longer. But then there wouldn't be much of a movie, would there? So, you guessed it. Plot twists come our way as things get even more menacing. The stakes are high, and you can't help but feel bad for the couple as their life gets overturned forever for something that was not even their fault. The film is a must-watch for anyone who has a guilty pleasure for found footage films and loves sci-fi as a genre.
Hi, Dad. I love your dad.
Host 2020. The pandemic was a fever dream for a lot of us. The days sort of blended into each other as we all stayed inside, some quarantining, some not. While the pandemic is now over, we're definitely more grateful for the freedom to move around the locality than we ever were. If you ever find yourself wanting to go back in time, we have just the right movie for you. Rob Savage's Host takes place in the middle of the pandemic, following a group of friends who decide that they'll do a seance over a Zoom meeting. While the idea sounds preposterous, it also makes sense, because all of us admittedly went a little bit crazy over the pandemic. In a strict runtime of 56 minutes, owing to the time duration of Zoom meetings, this movie is an extremely tension-filled ride. We see the dynamic between the friends as they bicker and banter, talking about how weird this whole concept of seance is. Although all the members of this seance were warned not to disrespect the spirits that may join them, one of the participants, who doesn't believe in all of this so much, goes ahead and cooks up a story. The joke garners a mixed reaction from everyone, some finding it hilarious, while some finding it a bit too obtuse. But unbeknownst to them, this ill-fated joke led to things devolving rather quickly. Host is a tense, thrilling movie with terrific performances from every actor. Fun fact, they even did their own stunts and effects. The movie is a technical accomplishment, and honestly, 2020's best no-fuss, fun horror movie.
The spell from this, then.
The Possession of Michael King, 2014. David Young noticed that there were a lot of films about possession, but none of them were from the perspective of the possessed one. This led to him thinking, and together with Teddy Sadafin, he came up with The Possession of Michael King. This film focuses on the life of Michael King, an atheist filmmaker, after the loss of his wife Samantha. While Michael found it hard to believe in God and supernatural entities, Samantha was his exact opposite. She was a hardcore believer who often visited a medium named Beverly. With all that said, you can imagine just how horrified Michael was when Samantha was killed in an accident. Lost in his own grief, Michael decided to go out of his way to prove that supernatural things, good or bad, do not exist. I suppose he had a vendetta against God and decided to cope with his loss in his own way. Together with his cameraman Jordan, Michael starts making a documentary where he puts himself through all types of rituals, sourced from people on the internet, and records everything that happens to him. It was a win-win situation in his eyes, as he'd either be okay if supernatural stuff is fake, or he'd get the proof of supernatural things existing firsthand. With that stellar logic, he performed a ritual for Satan, tripped on LSD, according to the advice of a demonologist, and even went to a cemetery with a necromancer to get a new soul put in his body. All of these experiences amounted to being just weird until he started hearing a noise in his head. Things go terribly wrong after this, with him murdering the family dog and sending away his daughter because of the voice asking him to kill her. Shane Johnson gives a stellar performance as Michael, who's slowly losing his mind and bodily autonomy as the entity possessing him slowly gets a stronger hold on him. You sympathize with his character, find yourself wanting to get out of this situation clean, but things simply don't go that way. Frankensteins Army, 2013. The found footage as a subgenre of horror doesn't leave much for imagination. You always find yourself expecting a bunch of people going through some horrific situation with a camera following them. That's why it's extremely hard for found footage films to reach the level of success that Blair Witch Project or Paranormal Activity got. However, this is where Frankensteins Army changes up the formula. Instead of being set in a modern-day 21st century time with camcorders and phones, we follow the adventure of Russian soldiers surviving the German troops in World War II. The war setting is definitely an unheard-of premise for a found footage film. And then, on top of this, the stakes rise up even more when the German compound the Soviets are infiltrating turns out to be a testing ground for a mad scientist descending from the Frankenstein family line. Chaos ensues when these undead soldiers come back to life, leaving the Russian soldiers in a pickle as they fight for their lives against what's essentially an unkillable army. The stakes are high, and the inventive staging definitely helps translate that fear into the hearts of the watchers. Richard Raaphorst definitely went all out for this movie, especially when it came to the practical effects and the monster designs. Well, yeah, the plot might seem to drag on at some moments, the other aspects of the movie, from the cinematography to fight choreography, definitely make up for it. If you're looking for a movie with amazing monsters that would surely leave you scared, then this movie is the one for you.
You know, I think we're all in awe of it.
The Tunnel, 2011. Corruption and cover-ups by the government are quite hot topics to discuss and portray when it comes to modern cinema. Carlo Ledesma aptly chose this topic for his movie, The Tunnel. The Tunnel is a pseudo-documentary set in Australia where we follow a journalist and a film crew venturing into the underground tunnels below the city of Sydney. Why are they doing that, you ask? Well, to uncover the truth behind a recent government cover-up, of course. The government of New South Wales had big plans to recycle millions of litres of water trapped in these very tunnels, which they suddenly abandoned without giving the public any reason. They also refused to give any reasons as to why homeless people using these same train tunnels for shelter end up going missing. With the silence of the ministers, Natasha decides to take matters into her own hands. As she ventures deep within the tunnels, we feel the looming despair and uncanny sense of something being awfully wrong. While finding homeless squatters in the tunnels didn't surprise our investigators, finding air raid shelters with strange noises definitely did. After the mysterious disappearance of all of their equipment, our crew finds themselves in a tough spot when Natasha picks up a camera, which had mysteriously changed places, and reviews the footage. The footage shows that something or someone had picked up the camera and had been stalking them with it. Tension amps up as the crew tries to find their way out while also looking for their missing member, only to come face to face with a monster lurking in the tunnels. For anyone who loved The Descent, this movie is a must-watch. Phoenix Forgotten, 2017. For his directorial debut, Justin Barber chose to give us the story of three teenagers who went out to find the source of Phoenix lights, a widely reported UFO phenomenon from 1997. The movie takes place in 2017, when Sophie is found reminiscing about her brother Josh's disappearance in 1997, when the Phoenix lights first appeared. Josh had recorded them and eventually became obsessed with UFOs. Sophie reviews the video footage that Josh had taken while investigating the lights with his friends Ashley and Mark. The movie's thrill comes from whatever we find out from the single videotape that was recovered after the disappearance of Josh and his friends. Despite not being a big budget movie, Phoenix Forgotten does a lot of things right. In the first two-thirds of the movie, where we follow Sophie's journey as she reviews the footage and asks around, we understand her headspace, the growing anxiety and paranoia she feels while also enjoying the story that's exceptionally well paced. In its 87-minute runtime, Phoenix Forgotten packs a punch with some nice touches to the last third, where the found footage nature of the film becomes evident. It's a thriller movie that will definitely have you hooked from the very first scene.
It's probably just somebody doing a joke, you know. It's a sick sense of humor.
Hangman, 2015. Home is our safe space. It's where we're at our most vulnerable and comfortable. But what happens when, unbeknownst to us, our safety, security, and comfort are being encroached upon? Adam Mason's 2015 movie, Hangman, explores this topic in detail. In this found footage film, we follow the lives of the Millers, who are happily on their way for a vacation. But while they're blissfully ignorant, their car gets broken into by the perpetrator at the airport parking lot. The perp manages to locate the Millers' residence in Los Angeles using the GPS in the car, and off he goes to make himself at home. The Millers, who don't know any better, return 2 weeks later, only to find their house in disarray. Their things have been shifted, and a hanging man is drawn on the bathroom wall. But nothing is stolen, and the police can't help them as a crime hasn't been committed. As we find out, the perp has not only broken into the home, but has also rigged up the entire house with cameras to make sure he can move about in peace. As he makes himself at home, the perp goes out of his way to psychologically pit all the family members against each other, follows the teen on her date, and puts extremely dark thoughts in the head of the youngest family member as he poses as Jimmy, a figure who shows up in the little boy's dreams. Seeing him stand just out of the line of sight of the Millers as their lives fall apart quite literally has to be the most unnerving sequence of this movie. This movie will definitely leave you questioning every darting shadow you see from the corner of your eye. The Last Broadcast, 1998. While all the movies we've listed so far are pretty recent, mostly released in the last 20 years, we have to take a look back at The Last Broadcast, which came out in 1998. Coming out just a year before the infamous found footage movie, The Blair Witch Project, I'll go out on a limb to say this. Some aspects of The Last Broadcast are so much better than The Blair Witch. The main plot revolves around a documentary filmmaker named David Lee. His topic of investigation? Why, the mysterious murder of two cable TV hosts, of course. The cable hosts, Stephen Afcast and Locust Wheeler, had their own show, known as Fact or Fiction. They mostly dealt with unsolved mysteries and the paranormal. As the show started pulling in fewer and fewer numbers and the threat of cancellation loomed over the heads of the hosts, Afcast came up with the idea of basically live comments during the show. While for us, this isn't something out of the ordinary, back in the cable TV days, this was definitely something absolutely groundbreaking. Now, on one of these chats, a caller suggested that the team go for the Jersey Devil, a mythical creature that's said to inhabit the forests in Pine Barren. Seeing this as a wonderful opportunity to kickstart their show, Afcast and Wheeler decided to go for it with Ryan Clacken and Jim Swerd on their team. Clacken claims that he can record the paranormal, whereas Swerd is a psychic. To milk the opportunity for what it's worth, the four men broadcast the entire hunt on television, radio, and the internet. As you've probably guessed, things definitely don't go as planned. Avacast's body is not found, and only Swerd manages to get out of the forest alive, with the deaths of Wheeler and Clacken caught on tape. As Lee describes the trial and what happened to Swerd, we think this would be it. But then, the last 15 minutes of the movie completely twist everything up, giving us a shocking reveal that I won't disclose. If the Blair Witch Project gets 4 stars in your eyes, the last broadcast will definitely come close to it.
I just don't understand what's going on anymore, Dad.
Exhibit A, 2007. Supernatural horror, while extremely popular and charming in its own way, is definitely a bit hard to believe. You know what's not hard to believe? Abuse from a close family member. Dom Rothero's independent psychological thriller Exhibit A tells us the story of a young girl named Judith. Judith is gay and lives with her parents, Andy and Sheila, and brother Joe, while having a major crush on Claire, the girl right across the street. Judith gets a video camera for her birthday, and as we see her documenting mundane things and spying on Claire for some reason, we get to learn about her. We witness the events that tear apart her family from her eyes, the way her father succumbs to the stress of wanting a promotion, lack of money, and failing to sell the house. She records her father's behavioral issues, which at first may seem harmless, but soon end up becoming something far more sinister when we realize that he'd actually tried to get the promotion by incapacitating the candidate that was chosen over him. As her family falls apart, we, along with Judith, learn about her mother's affair and her brother's drug problem, and eventually it comes out to everyone that Judith is gay. All hell breaks loose when Judith comes home to find her father desperately trying to off himself. Judith does what anyone would do and tries to comfort her father, but Andy is too far gone. The events that unfold are harrowing to watch, and as the movie ends, leaving the fate of our main protagonist unknown, you can't help but squirm a little in your seat as the whole experience is just that visceral. Unfriended, 2014. The current era we live in is fully digitized, and using that as a premise, we got Unfriended in 2014. It's a very niche approach to a typical found footage film, as it mostly plays out on the computer screen. With social media giving people the anonymity that's often misused by a lot of people, Levin Gebrades decided to incorporate that into this harrowing experience. Never going out of Blair Lily's laptop screen, we watch as she and her friends get on a Skype call discussing the death of her bestie, Laura Barnes. Laura was a victim of severe online bullying after a video of her drunk at a party was leaked online. No one knows who uploaded it, but that didn't stop everyone from ganging up on Laura. Eventually, she killed herself, and her suicide too went viral. As these friends chat, it becomes very clear that Laura is not super well liked by the said friends. This opinion quickly takes a turn when seemingly Laura's Skype account joins the group's Skype call, resulting in chaos from the moment she joined. As the ghost of Laura Barnes works on the group, dividing them amongst themselves and airing dirty secrets, we follow Blair's logic and flow as she uses the internet to help her out. What at first seems like a glitch or a prank soon devolves into something sinister as the friends start getting killed one by one. Be My Cat, a film for Anne, 2015. What can be more terrifying than believable human monsters? Well, Adrian Toffey is here with his movie, Be My Cat, a film for Anne, that'll surely give you the willies. Adrian plays this absolutely unhinged but cheerful filmmaker who's very, very, very enamored with Anne Hathaway. I mean, I get why he's obsessed with her, and so am I, but the way he sets out to convince her to work with him on a film is absolutely terrifying. What's supposed to be this pitch for why Anne should be working with him takes this deranged turn when he shows off just how dedicated he is to his art, even if it meant harm to the young actresses he cast in Anne's place. This daring meta cinema is a whirlwind of film to sit through. Toffey wrote, directed, and acted in this movie, and it's so hard to separate him from the character he portrayed. As he lures more and more unsuspecting actresses, promising them work only to murder them, it's an unforgettable watch. The tones of misogyny and perversion are intermingled with violence, passion, and obsession, giving us a terrifying but fascinating watch. Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. We've had several cannibal movies over the years. White or European tourists go to the jungles of the Amazon, and boom, they become cannibal tribe snacks. But Ruggero Deodato was the one who made this genre infamous with his movie Cannibal Holocaust. Although the movie starts with the beginning cliches of a conventional film, the plot soon switches gears when we're shown the very realistic and quite shocking video evidence of the filmmakers who were lost in the Amazon. Rape, murder, brutal killings of animals, and of course, cannibalism. This movie has it all. The shaky cam footage and the low quality of the set footage somehow made these snippets extremely believable, leading to the crowd claiming Deodato made a snuff film in the name of an art film. Deodato was even tried for murders, as everyone believed that the murders they saw on screen were real. The rumors and the court case fueled the infamy of Deodato and his movie. And even though we now know that the actors were alive and the murders and rape were simply simulated, the movie still reigns supreme as a grotesque film. If you're a fellow animal lover like me though, you might want to sit this one out, as real animals were harmed in the making of this film. Willow Creek, 2013. After the booming success of Blair Witch, everyone wanted to make a found footage film where people go off into the woods looking for something spooky. However, not everyone managed to capture the audience as well as Willow Creek did. Directed by Bobcat Goldthwait, this found footage film brings a light comedic touch to what's otherwise a terrifying experience. You have a young couple, Jim and Kelly. Jim is obsessed with Bigfoot lore and is a firm believer in the existence of the Bigfoot, whereas Kelly is a non-believer. Despite their differences in opinions, the couple band together and go to Willow Creek to film their very own documentary on Bigfoot lore. From the moment they stop at Willow Creek and do their interviews about Bigfoot, you get the eerie sense that things are not as simple as they seem on the surface. While eating at a diner, they come across a poster of a missing woman, which definitely should have made them suspicious. Doubling down on top of that, there was an old man who definitely didn't want them to stay the night in the forest. Despite the warnings, the couple paid no attention to those and set up camp at the Patterson-Gimlin filming location. When they return from their swim and find their camp trashed, the couple still decides to stay the night, which ends up becoming the most horrifying night of their life. We watch the couple huddle together in the tent, frozen in fear as something big stomps around them while a woman's distant cries are heard. Seeing the couple fathom the trouble they're in and still figuring out how to survive the night will surely get your adrenaline pumping.
I needed to be fresh to get a usable sample.
The Devil's Doorway, 2018. Set in 1960, The Devil's Doorway tells us the story of two priests who were sent to document a reported miracle in a Magdalene laundry in Ireland. But upon arriving, the priests soon realize that things are not as hunky-dory as they'd originally imagined. The film acts as a documentary that focuses on the oppressive environment in this particular area. Mothers and children are constantly set for a life in servitude for the church. Things around them are constantly escalating, one mishap at a time, and Father Thomas and Father John are extremely perplexed. Mother Superior, played by Helena Barine, is the one who's sort of watching over the fathers as well as the events that unfold around them, making it very clear that the fathers are nothing but rats stumbling about in a carefully crafted maze. Things definitely ramp up 1,000 times when Kathleen, a possessed and pregnant girl, shows up on screen. This movie points out the hypocrisy of religious dogma and asks us, the audience, consider the struggle the victims go through. Life in the Magdalene laundry is brutal, and with the bleeding eyes of the Virgin Mary and all the horrors that unfold around Mother Superior, this movie is a brilliant watch that ends with an extremely satisfying conclusion. They're watching 2016. We're back at it again, sending off American people into unknown places and getting them hurt. Only this time, it's in Moldova. An all-American crew that focuses on home improvement happens to show up in Moldova to record a follow-up segment for Becky, an American homeowner who's transforming a decrepit house in a rural village in Moldova. The crew shows up with a Moldovan businessman, Vladimir, in tow. However, the crew immediately end up getting hatred from the locals when Sarah, the newcomer, and Greg, the videographer, sneak off to a funeral to record it. Obviously, when they're discovered, the locals are not too happy with them. They narrowly escape, barely getting the short end of the stick thanks to a police officer who manages to calm down the furious mob. As the production goes on, the crew faces more and more hostility from the locals, with one local breaking into Sarah's room. Tension brews within the crew, and it's revealed that Becky's boyfriend Goran and Kate, producer of the show, were having an affair, and the members of this crew had recorded the whole ordeal when they walked in on the two having sex. Drama. Before Sarah can figure out how to use this information for herself, Vladimir drops the law on the crew and tells us about a legend. Once upon a time, the town was afflicted with plague, and the townspeople accused a lonely woman who lived on the outskirts of the town for it. They called her a witch and burned her at a stake. As you can guess, the witch shows up in the final act of the movie, causing much chaos and bloodbath. With Joe Dante's clever writing and references, this movie is an entertaining watch. Butterfly Kisses, 2018. This 2018 film will definitely grip you by the throat by the very first scene, where we see Rachel Armiger's character, Sophia Crane, look into the camera and state that she doesn't know how long she'll live. Sophia's thesis project is a documentary explaining the Baltimore legend Peeping Tom. When someone stares into the Ilchester Tunnel for an hour without blinking, the Peeping Tom is conjured. Obviously, doing that isn't possible, so Sophia and her friend Feldman set up a camera, acting as the human eye. On reviewing the footage, we find out that the Peeping Tom was conjured, and now he'd attached himself to the camera, finding a way to get out in the real world. Things get confusing when Gavin York, a budding filmmaker, finds these tapes that Sophia had made before disappearing. So now, Gavin starts working on piecing together the mystery and hopes to get to the bottom of this entire rabbit hole. Throughout the movie, we follow the perspectives of Sophia, Gavin, and a crew that's filming Gavin for a documentary. This crew's led by Eric Christopher Myers, the director of the film. The meta layers in this movie are definitely laying it on thick. We follow Gavin as he gets more and more obsessed with the Peeping Tom legend legend, ruining his relationships and spiraling out of control because of this obsession. Eventually, as a last-ditch effort to get this film on the Peeping Tom sanctioned, without hearing others call it a fluke, Gavin takes the camera and runs off into the tunnel. What happens next will not be said, as that'll spoil the movie. While there are mixed feelings about the story and acting of the movie, everyone agrees that this flick definitely deconstructed its own genre quite well, even as Gavin reaches out to the local radio station to promote his movie. The way he gets dismissed by Eduardo Sanchez himself, calling his movie a derivative film to the Blair Witch Project, is definitely heartbreaking to watch.
Does Amy come or do I spend quality time with my mom Saturday night?
Megan is Missing, 2011. In 2020, this 2011 film garnered a lot of attention on social media, with a series of posts on X and several TikTokers describing this movie with utter disgust. But what made this movie so popular? Well, Michael Goy's nihilistic take on the dangers of the internet has never felt truer than now. As children, we were told not to give strangers our names, let alone our addresses, or get into someone's car. Now, we call up strangers and get in their car, or ask strangers to drop off groceries and other items at our doorstep. Megan is Missing takes place in 2011, when we weren't even this digitized, and seeing the horrific fate that befell the two young girls we follow throughout the movie fills everyone with the dread of what had happened now. We follow the friendship of Amy and Megan, two young girls who are completely from different social circles. While Amy is the goody two-shoes, coming from a decently affluent family with loving parents, Megan is from a broken family with abusive parents, and is going through a serious rebellious phase. The videos we see of them are recorded on Amy's video camera, which definitely exudes peak 2010s vibes. We learn about the lives of both these girls from phone transmissions, computer files, home videos, and public news reports, as stated in the opening credits. The main point of the movie is Megan, the wild child who's super cool about sex and drugs, even though she is a teenager, meets up with a guy called Josh, whom she's never seen before. Amy figures that Josh could be the one behind Megan's abduction, and she tells the police about him. After this, Josh somehow manages to get to Amy on another web chat and threatens her. Following this, he kidnaps her, and then comes the infamous camcorder scene. 22 minutes of footage where Josh is seen imprisoning Amy, torturing her, treating her like an animal, and, after brutally raping her, burying her alive. As you can guess, the final act is disturbing, and this is one of the main reasons why this movie got all the hype in 2020. Exists, 2014. After his success with the Blair Witch Project, Eduardo Sanchez returned to the horror genre with his found footage film Exists. The story follows a YouTube-obsessed Brian, his brother Matt, Matt's girlfriend Dora, and another couple as they travel into the East Texas woods. While everyone thinks they're headed for the family cabin to have fun in the sun and dirt bike to their heart's content, the reality is that Brian is here with an ulterior motive. See, his uncle had always rambled on about Sasquatch sightings, and Brian now wanted to know if they truly existed. So, what better way to do it than to take a whole crew with you into the woods? The existence of Bigfoot is answered pretty early on in the movie, when the group end up running into a mysterious creature in the woods. Our main dude bro, Brian, who had been recording everything, soon realized that the animal they sideswiped was very big and hairy. But who cares? This is the motto for the group, and they carry on to their cabin. Soon enough, they realize they're in a bit of a pickle when they find their car destroyed and there's no cell tower. Their attacker, a confirmed Bigfoot, keeps showing up and retreating back without going for the kill straight away. This movie heavily leans into the psychology of fear and hits all the expected marks of a found footage horror film. Of course, there are cheap scares, and yeah, everyone gets separated, but the movie still remains pretty quick-paced. You'd not feel like the movie is dragging on at any point, as Sanchez kept most of the action for the last 15 minutes. With amazing creature design, the Bigfoot in this movie looks extremely scary and almost Neanderthal-looking. You can clearly see that Bigfoot has intelligence and a purpose, which I feel is a fresh take on this particular monster. The ending might be a bit hit or miss for you, but I found it satisfying, personally speaking. The Borderlands, 2013. Just when you think that found footage films can't be scary enough, you end up uncovering a hidden gem, and in my eyes, The Borderlands is just that. Written and directed by Elliot Goldner, this movie follows the adventures of three men, Deacon Gray Parker and Mark Amidon, when they're sent to the Devon countryside by the Vatican to investigate the supernatural activities reported from the newly reopened 13th century church. Despite being a religious brother, Deacon is definitely a skeptic, and no matter how much the local priest Father Krellick insists that there is a miracle, as things move around all spooky-wooky, Deacon is not ready to accept it. However, things in this countryside are definitely odd beyond imagination, as we witness young locals burn a sheep in front of the cottage where the men reside. Things slowly go from bad to worse, as Mark's ear starts bleeding while the mic radio setup picks up growls and whispers. Father Krellick suddenly decides to leap to his death in front of a horrified Mark, which definitely changes the stakes of the movie in an instant. As Deacon and Gray try to figure out what's happening, the locals are seen behaving more and more brashly with them, going as far as to evict them. This is when we finally get a clue that this this church may have been built on the grounds of a pagan temple, and Deacon quickly calls upon Father Calvino, the Vatican exorcist, to help purify the church grounds. But the exorcism simply makes things worse, with Calvino's eyes bleeding and Mark seemingly killed. The last act of the movie is extremely scary as we follow Deacon and Gray as they descend into the underground labyrinth under the church grounds. They find proof of child sacrifice and soon realize that Father Krellick had been worshipping the pagan deity instead. They see Mark, who seemingly can't hear their calls, so they follow him as he takes them further into the darkness. They find Mark's crucifix on the ground in front of a tunnel, and both men decide to crawl inside, hoping to get to Mark. This is when the ends of the tunnel close up with what seem to be membranes, and the tunnel starts moving in its own way, making it evident that it isn't a tunnel at all. Turns out, this is the digestive system of an organism, and as the walls of the tunnel secrete enzymes, we see Deacon and Gray slowly dissolve, leaving us, the audience, stuck with a truly haunting image. Horror in the High Desert, 2021. There's no denying that fast-paced documentary-style films have their own charm and garner quite the fan base. But as someone who enjoyed Lake Mungo and its slow pace quite a bit, I can't recommend Horror in the High Desert enough. This slow-paced movie follows the story of Gary Hingham, a hiker who ends up missing in the Great Basin Desert. The movie gives us information through the interviews with Gary's sister and roommate, as well as the private investigator that Gary's sister hired and a journalist. All of them theorize what could have happened and how he ended up missing. Initially, when Gary's truck was found 55 miles away from his point of departure in Ruth, hopes returned. However, despite all searches by the police and volunteers, no trace of him or his location was found. It was accepted that perhaps he died due to the local fauna or fell victim to the weather. As you can guess, that is not the case. While the movie starts off as a crime documentary, it soon devolves into found footage once Gary's backpack with his severed hand clutching the video camera is found. Dutch Marek definitely took a risk in making this movie by skirting around the tried and tested formula, and I have to say, the risk was definitely worth taking.
And we started a conversation about, what the other one does, what they like so much.
Area 51. Oren Peli, the writer behind Chernobyl Diaries and The River, gave us Area 51, a story following three friends, Reed, Darren, and Ben. They attend a party together, and while they're there, Reed somehow vanishes. Being the terrible friends they are, Darren and Ben decide to leave Reed after not finding him, only to almost run him over in a dark, secluded road where Reed is standing in a daze. Since this incident, Reed is absolutely obsessed with aliens and Area 51, going as far as to research and plan an infiltration of the government base to uncover the secrets. This obsession affects Reed's social life, work life, and everything else, but Reed is hopeful and manages to get Darren and Ben to go along with him. They even get the help of Jelena, a conspiracy theorist whose father used to work there, and they sneak into the base together. They find everything from anti-gravity material and lifelike liquid to containers full of human blood and organs. After being attacked by a predatory alien, the group is separated, and Reed and Jelena end up in a place with a bunch of sleeping aliens. They get chased further into a cave where more mysterious signs and symbols are drawn. The movie is suspenseful and cliched, but in the best way possible. The film ends with an impending sense of doom that you just might find yourself feeling as the credits roll. Marvelous verdicts. With that, guys, we come to the end of this video. Whether you love them or hate them, there's no denying that the found footage films are a guilty pleasure for a lot of us horror fans. Let us know in the comments which movie you like the most out of our list, and we'll see you guys next time.